the present participants in the construction industry. As such, we've established this National Academy of Construction Ask Me Anything to help transfer knowledge to the next generation of leaders here on the webinar with us. So the format for our Ask Me Anything is simple. We're going to have a series of speakers this fall to make short presentations about their career and give a little bit about their perspective on the industry. And then we will ask questions from our attendees. So today we have close to 300 people participating. And if you have not already, please email your questions into nacama@colorado.edu. At the end of the webinar here, we'll draw one name for a $500 scholarship, which has been sponsored by the National Academy of Construction. So without further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker here, and that's Mike Loulakis. He's president of Capital Project Strategies, LLC. It's a specialized consulting firm that provides strategic procurement, contracting, and risk management advice to clients that develop and construct capital projects. Mike has a varied background. He's both a civil engineer and a lawyer, and he's been in the construction industry for 40 years now. He's particularly well known for his expertise in the area of design build, project delivery, and in addition to being elected to the National Academy of Construction, Mike is a fellow of the American College of Construction Lawyers and the Design Build Institute of America. He holds a civil engineering degree from Tufts and a law degree from Boston University School of Law. So Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you for a brief talk, and then I will ask you questions from our participants.
Sounds great, Keith. Welcome, everybody. It is really unusual for somebody like me to be able to lead off a program like this, and I'm really delighted to be able to do that. First of all, just some kudos to Keith. Keith joined the NAC, I think 2 years ago, maybe it was 3 years ago, and immediately came in and said, you know, you guys really should be doing something for the industry, and as opposed to just having dinners. And so Keith came up with this idea, and it's a phenomenal idea. It's all of us, we all have a lot of gray hair. 40 years in the industry, you know, sounds daunting. But yeah, I've been in the industry for a long time. I've got gray hair. The other people that you'll talk to will also have that longevity in the industry. And the idea of being able to have a platform to be able to answer your questions and talk is just great. So I'm happy to be able to answer your questions and give you a little bit of feedback on what I've done with my career. I'll try to make this, you know, kind of brief, but at least give you a little bit of sense of things. So for me, I had no plans on being in the construction industry, and I wanted to be a lawyer. I applied to Tufts, and I got into the arts and sciences school. I was going to be an economics major, and I was going to be a lawyer, and probably go back to New Hampshire, where I'm from, and you know, practice, I don't know, whatever local practice you do in southern New Hampshire. And this is really an important lesson for you, because most of you are young and students, and then the lesson is that, you know, every now and then your parents come up with a really good idea and say you should listen to them. So my dad had, as he was looking at what I was doing and the courses I was taking, and this was 1972 when the economy was a little bit iffy, he said, you know, Mike, you really, Michael, sorry, I'm Michael. Michael, when you want to go to law school, but what happens if you don't get in? What happens if we can't afford it? What are you going to fall back on? And so he said, you know, you really love math, sciences, you're good at it. I've been looking into this idea of of Tufts engineering program. And so I was open-minded. Even though I was 18, I was open-minded. My dad and I went and visited the dean of the engineering school. I learned, you know, what I'd be doing with that engineering school. And so I transferred in. I sort of at the very beginning. And what was interesting at the time, it's not that way anymore, but, you know, at the time, the arts and science school was a very difficult school to get into, and the engineering school was not. So people applied to the engineering school with the idea of transferring over to the arts and science school. I was the only one that did it the other way and got into the engineering school. And gosh, you know, I look back at my career, and it was the single, you know, most important thing that ever happened to me in terms of my career. First of all, I still wanted to be a lawyer, but I loved engineering. I loved, getting involved, with the problem solving of engineering. And I love the camaraderie of solving problems and working together in groups and all the things that, most of you guys know. And so, so with that, I graduated. I focused on being a geotechnical engineer. I graduated early because I wanted to practice geotechnical before going off to law school. And I figured going off to law school that I would wind up working for a corporation like Bechtel or Fluor or something like that. Never going to litigate. I was a classic engineer in that I didn't feel comfortable talking in front of people. I was a pretty good writer, but man, I just, it put me in the back row in terms of answering questions and all that sort of stuff. But I really had thought that what I wanted to do, was to solve problems in the field. And ultimately, I went to law school and realized that there was this thing called construction claims, which was just starting at that point in time, because this is now 1976. All these subway projects are going forward, and they're having problems, and there are delays and things of that nature. So I did ultimately work for Bechtel for a summer in San Francisco. Intended to go back. I got some advice again from some great mentors there, and they said, Mike, you can come on back, but if you work for a couple of years in a law firm, you're going to be more valuable to us, and you'll be broader. So you might want to think about doing that. So I applied with a law firm, a construction law firm in the Washington area, figuring that it would be a Gilligan's Island deal, 2 to 3 years, and then I'd leave. And 30 years later, I left. I loved it. I loved practicing law. It turns out that I was okay public speaking. I loved having clients. I loved being in court. I loved being in arbitration. I loved the advocacy that was involved in it. It was just a wonderful period of time for me. Had great partners, very different than engineering, because the answers are never black and white. You're trying to think through a lot of gray, and then understand what the right thing to do is based upon circumstances. But that experience at Wickwar Gavin, which was my law firm, was phenomenal. First, I did a lot of litigation, and I represented contractors early in my career. And then I had the good fortune of being able to, we had an energy practice that came in, and the energy practice was putting deals together. And so I got involved in that, got involved in contract drafting, got involved in representing owners, got involved in EPC and design build. And that kind of, in that time period was not all that common. We had no design build in the public sector. And ultimately what happened is that because of my interest in design build, I wrote a few articles. I took a very academic interest in it. All of a sudden, the public sector started blossoming with procurement changes. I had the great fortune of being involved with the Design Build Institute of America. They got me involved early because they had seen some of my writings. That spawned even more work in the design build area. And so really kind of like for the last 25 years, I've worked in alternative delivery. And while I still do a little bit of conflict work, my work is really the front end work, and it's thinking about how projects should be pulled together, and working on contracts and working on relationships and thinking about best practices and how you make things work without having claims, as opposed to litigating at the end of these things. Along the way, I met some great people. Keith Molenaar being one of them. Keith took a very active role in researching design build, and I've been blessed to be able to have Keith as a friend and be able to work on some projects with him as we've gone forward and evaluated how to make design build better. So 11 years ago, having again a 30-year career with my law firm, I was president of the firm, chairman of the firm, and I'd been that way for 15 years. But I wanted to try something different. I figured I was either going to end my career doing what I had started with people that I loved, but I wasn't sure that was the way I wanted to have a 45 or 50-year career doing one thing with one firm. I really wanted to go back to problem solving. I wanted to get out of the litigation and conflict side, even though I can still advise clients on that. And I kind of went back to my roots, as I see it, of looking at front-end parts of projects and then trying to make a difference in how they get pulled together. So my company, Capital Project Strategies, which is it's just me. But it's been a way for me to work projects, design build or public-private partnerships or something generally other than design bid build, and try to help the owners deliver it. I only work for owners at this stage. I'm on several corporate boards with design builders. I do a lot of industry work. I do a lot of neutral work as an arbitrator or as a mediator, but my client work is really built around the owner. Still have a chance to work for private sector owners. I did a lot of work in the energy sector and maintained that. I work in the petrochemical sector, which has gotten me to work for Dow and BP and sort of go abroad with them on some of their programs. But in the public sector, I do a lot of transportation work, a lot of water and wastewater work, and it's just been a blast. So I could talk more. I won't. I know you have some questions. I want to be able to answer them, but as I go through this, you'll at least know my background and sort of my interests, and hopefully I'll be able to give you a perspective. You're going to get some great perspectives. I don't know. Hopefully you have a chance to listen to everybody that's going to participate over these, umpty-ump courses. But all of us will have perspectives, and mine might be a little bit different than the others. But I'm happy to take some questions. So Keith, have at it.
Great. Well, thank you, and it's a wonderful overview. We do have well over 100 questions already, so we won't be able to ask them all. I'm just going to kind of randomly pick through them. And again, if your question's read, that will make you eligible for a scholarship from the National Academy of Construction. So I'm going to start with one from Tessa. Tessa is asking, what's the #1 quality trait you believe an employer needs to carry, you believe an employee needs to carry into the field with them to be successful?
So Tessa, that's a great question. I'll give you a little bit more background. So my daughter went to Tufts Civil Engineer, and and I really thought of her as being somebody that should go into construction. So she worked with Clark Construction on a bunch of projects with Disney. Met her husband there. So Rick, who's my son-in-law, also worked with Clark. He was a civil engineer that wanted only to be in the field. Christina was really looking at the office project management side, and Rick wanted to be a field superintendent, and he is, and he's phenomenal. So he's been there for about 6 or 7 years, and so the thing that I had a perspective of this before Rick and Christina did this, but just based on my client work. But I will tell you that for me, the #1 thing that a field person, aside from the technical side, you got to be good at anything you do. So you don't get a pass on that. But what makes a great technical person in the field is somebody that's got empathy for everybody else that's working out there, because this is a hard business. And if you sort of look at it with the idea that I'm always right, especially if you work for a general contractor, right, where you're sort of at the top end of the chain and you got subcontractors. But if you think that way, it's a long, long road to a difficult project. Having empathy, understanding how to get along with people, understanding how to listen, how to be proactive in working with your trade partners, that's a really important thing, an attribute. And not everybody has it. And it's sometimes very hard because, contractually, it's just easy to sort of say, this is what you got to do, do it. And without recognizing that they've got their own pressures. And sometimes if you spend time understanding their pressures, you can find accommodations and move ahead. That's my view.
Perfect. Tessa asked a few questions. Let me just ask one more from her. This one specifically about during her time in school, but for employment after graduation, how do you get employers to recognize you in the industry while you're still in school?
Well, another great question. I'll draw on my own experience. When I was looking for a law firm to be interested in me, and the fact that I had an engineering degree made a huge difference, because I only wanted to work in construction. And so, and that was my dad's advice. My dad, he didn't use these terms, but I'm going to use it. My term is, you got to have a gimmick. You got to have a shtick. You got to have something that's a differentiator. And so for me, being an engineer was the first differentiator. Having an interest in design build became my ultimate differentiator as my career has gone on. So for you, I would say, for any of you, I would say, first, find something you're really interested in that's now going to differentiate you and be really good at it. What's an example of that? a huge differentiator would be if you can speak Spanish, or any foreign language, but particularly Spanish. That's an incredible attribute to have, and it will be something that will recognize you as a differentiator, but also allow you to do your job better as you're now out in the field. So find that thing that makes you different, and then I'm going to add to that because you asked for one, but I'm going to give you two. In school, people are going to, regardless of where you are, being in the construction industry or trying to get a consulting gig with a finance company or a bank, they're going to look at what you have done and how motivated you were to try to stretch yourself. So to the extent, for those of you that have an opportunity to be involved in the ASCE student chapters or the Design Build Institute student chapters or AGC, or participating in concrete canoe races, things like that, that goes a great way to showing that you just didn't sit back and drink a bunch of beer and get good grades. You can do that too, but I think those sorts of things really resonate, with employers, and it does carry you into, having some skills that you'll need for working in the field or in an office.
Great, thanks so much. This next question is from Paige, and it's more detailed towards project delivery methods. So, what are the current industry's perceived pros and cons with the design build contract versus having separate design and construction contractors on a project?
Well, this is right up our alley, isn't it, Keith? Sort of talking about these differentiators. I'll try to keep this, simple, because this is an hour lecture. The simple side is that the design bid build approach, and I'm going to say the non-integrated delivery process, where a designer is not contractually tied to a contractor, and the owner basically has, contracts with each of them. While it's historically been the way the public sector has worked, it just has not worked very well, and because those entities are not integrated and they don't really look out for each other. So design build has been a great way to be able to get integration, get the teams talking to each other. As we know, and as you'll know if you don't know now, the designers are dependent upon good construction people to be able to say, hey, here's something you should think about doing with the design. Constructability is huge. And the contractors have a lot of skill sets, in terms of being able to schedule and understand how to, coordinate a lot of different trades and estimate. And designers aren't great at that. By the same token, if we don't have a design, we don't have a project. And the designers really are the ones that will start off in terms of being able to now take visions and move forward with them. So these guys they're integral to each other, and having them together in the design build process works phenomenally well. There's certainly nuances as to how to make it work really well, and there are ways it can work really bad if it's not done right. But that integration is really the key, creating a single point, of responsibility contractually. But more than that, put the contract aside. It's the idea of really thinking about how the teams will work together for the best interest of everybody in the project.
Great. Let me stay on that train of thought. And John asked a question about contract types or payment methods. So what types of payment methods or contract types do you like to see? And he has a follow-up there. Was there ever a time you used one and an owner wasn't sure that was the right choice?
John, again, great question. Sort of one of our classroom kind of questions that we think about with moving into alternative delivery. I think each project has a uniqueness about it that will support what you consider to be the contracting approach. And the contracting approach is going to be, is it lump sum, is it cost plus, is it cost plus with a guaranteed maximum price, is it target pricing where we don't even have a commitment on price. So I think I would say that there is a lot of cost in administering a cost reimbursable and a guarantee, and with or without a guaranteed maximum price contract. It provides a lot of transparency that can be very good for owners. And my view in a collaborative delivery process is that a guaranteed maximum price contract cost plus moving to guarantee maximum price works really well. I will say that for many owners, at some point, the benefit of having that openness and transparency loses its value, and moving to a lump sum can work very well for them as well. Where I've seen problems or regrets by an owner is when they have closed the book really fast on a lump sum, where let's assume it's been negotiated and we're at a 30% design, which is pretty typical in the industrial area. And the owner then wants to, they've got buyer's remorse. How much contingency did I pay for? How's the contingency being spent? You know, well, you guys should have had that in your price and you didn't. A GMP relationship or a cost plus relationship opens that up more. Doesn't make it foolproof, but owners that, you know, have closed it too fast have said, I should have done a GMP relationship. So hopefully that answers the question, John. But
yeah, excellent question. Thanks for the response. I'm going to go back a little bit more global here. There's a couple kind of big questions for you. This one's from Samuel. What's the biggest challenge with capital projects today?
Oh my, biggest problem, biggest challenge with capital projects. You know, with many of these, it remains, you know, having an owner that can manage scope so that you stay within a budget. You know, everybody, especially if there's a lot of stakeholders involved, everybody wants to put ornaments on the Christmas tree, and the Christmas tree can only support so many ornaments. And so then if you can't control scope, then you, and this is public or private, then what happens is you have a problem because budgets get messed up and somebody then has to be able to cut back scope that they expected. So it's a great question. I haven't thought about it before, but that's kind of the answer that's coming off the top of my head. It's you know, managing you know, what the owner gets and what the owner wants.
Yeah. So Mike, a couple people asked questions about budget. So along that line, Kirthana asked, what's the most common reason for construction projects going over budget? But maybe I'll change that a little bit and just ask you to reflect on one of your projects that unfortunately has gone over budget. Could you give us a specific example of one that you've been involved with, and maybe looking back on it, how you might have been able to avoid that? Yeah,
I'm going to give, I didn't know that question. That's a great question. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that this is not my project, but if you want to know why we have budget problems, especially on major projects, I'll call them mega projects, look to the Big Dig. So basically what happened on the Big Dig, it was a project that was never going to go forward if people were honest about what the budget was. So what happens is that you basically say, hey, it's going to cost $5 billion. And then you put shovel to ground, or you do design work first, and then maybe the budget goes up a little bit. Then you put shovel to ground, and once you started, you can't stop. And so then it can grow to $15 billion, and people will have their heads on the chopping block, but the project has gone forward. I find that to be, and I'm not going to talk about the projects that I have that are experiencing that, but I will tell you that that's in the public sector, that and the private sector, that is really what I see to be the biggest issue. I'm going to put a couple of variants off of that because I think the question is deserving of more than that. The other part is that it's inherently hard for an engineering team and an owner's team to understand what the market is. And on a project that is, let's say 7 years long, 6, 7, 8 years long, how do you really know what the pricing will be of subcontractors? So I'm working on a project in Houston right now, which is, and I can disclose this, it's the city of Houston's water treatment plant. It's the Northeast Water Treatment Plant project. It's basically about $1.5 billion project, but it's going to take, from the time we signed the design build contract, about 8 years to deliver. It's just a challenge as to how you actually get pricing information that's real. And then what happens is that you have different views on how much contingency should be in there, which then starts, giving rise to expectations that are problematic for owners when they think the contingency is too much. But that's that forecasting that, especially if we're going to have a lump sum or guarantee maximum price
Sorry
relationship.
about that.
That's on your side.
Yeah.
Good. That I think can be, a struggle. So it's ending that question. It's a combination of just not knowing the marketplace very well. If you are trying to come up with a legitimate cost budget, and then the realities of the marketplace, not being able to respond with these long duration projects.
Excellent. And I would encourage everybody, if you're not familiar with that project, The Big Dig, there's a lot published beyond Wikipedia and other things. There's some very good studies, and it is an excellent way to learn about cost growth. Kind of sticking on that theme of personal experience, Michael's asking you, what's the most difficult job you've been on?
Well, Michael, the most difficult job that I have been on is one that I'm on now. And it's a mega project, and I've been involved from the start of procurement through all the DRB, the Dispute Resolution Board hearings that are taking place now. And what makes it difficult is it is technically challenging, but what makes it difficult is that the parties don't get along. And they fight about everything. They shouldn't be fighting about everything. They can't get certain issues resolved when they should be resolved, which promotes further fights. And so it goes back to sometimes owners not behaving as adults and providing leadership where they will stop their teams from taking tough positions or improper positions, where they will make decisions and allow the project to move forward as opposed to letting everything languish. And I'll say that the other side, the contractor side, not recognizing that they can't fight about everything, and they can't sort of belittle an owner for having challenges and being able to make decisions. But if you don't get along, it's tough. And this project, even though I'm a consultant, but these projects those are the ones that are the worst projects.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing your personal experience here. Allison asks a good question about a solution for some of the problems you've been discussing, or the challenges, and that's around integrated project delivery. So she says she's heard of the advantages of integrated project delivery, but never the disadvantages. So could you explain a little bit to everybody what the philosophy of IPD is, integrated project delivery, and then what might be some of the disadvantages?
Sure. So IPD, and we have, what you'll see if you read about this is that you've got capital IPD, integrated project delivery, that is a delivery system. And then you have little IPD, which is how we try to process administratively projects. Design build, for example, is an integrated project delivery approach where we have the designer and contractor working together, but there's a management structure around that and a single contract. Capital IPD, right? The formal term is basically a multi-party agreement where we'll have the lead designer, lead sub-consultants, could be structural, it could be MEP consultant, engineer. We'll have a general contractor. We will frequently have a structural contract, or a structural contractor, a mechanical, an MEP contractor. We can have a lot of different parties, and they're all party to the same agreement, where they're going to work together as a team to be able to deliver a project and meet budget, schedule, and all the other expectations of quality that the owner has. It's viewed as a real way of keeping everybody on the same unequal footing, as opposed to having a hierarchical system. They was started in the hospital area, where we've had tons of claims. The VA has a ton of claims. The private sector hospitals had a ton of claims and problems and delays. And so Sutter Health out in California said there's got to be a better way to do this. They sort of created the formal integrated project delivery process. Other hospitals have used it. Other owners have now used it. And there's a lot of really good things that can come out of it. But the downside is, to some extent, that it is assuming that there is really that the owner is picking up the ultimate risks of performance of the project. And so that will mean that if things go really bad, budgets are not met, schedules are not met, the only risk is some part of the team members' fees. But they don't really assume responsibility financially for things outside of their fee. And it's very hard for a lot of owners to accept that. Some owners, their boards are expecting that there's going to be some accountability, even if there's a balanced contract approach off of that. So I find that to be one structural problem. The other problem is that for the most part, you wind up having a potential of no leadership. And look, I'm a design build person. I'm an engineer design build person. I like the idea of having somebody that's in charge, even if there's a collaborative relationship. Somebody is in charge to make sure that things get done. I've been involved in a couple of IPD projects, and things just seem to drift. That doesn't mean that they can't work really well with owners that are experienced, but it's hard to get that experience and make it work. So the question was geared to what's wrong or what the challenges are. I'll make one other challenge. We still have issues with how you handle insurance and accountability and things of that nature, liability arising out of IPD, which makes the contracting process a little bit clunky. That's a legal term, clunky. But we can overcome that with great relationships. The question really is, does the owner want to have that kind of responsibility, and does it feel comfortable? Oops. You still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, something that's kind of weird. I can't see you anymore. I'll get there. The owner has to figure out basically what its goals are and whether it can be accomplished by having a process that's going to be that fluid.
Great. Well, thanks. Really great questions from everyone here. Let me take a step back and ask you just a few broader questions. We have about 15 minutes left here, just to give you a sense of time. I wanted to try and get through a few more here. So Trevor asked, and we have quite a few entrepreneurial folks here asking this same question, but Trevor asked, how difficult would it be to start a new company today? So generally in the construction industry, I know you've been in different areas, and what do you think the challenge is, and how difficult would that be today?
So I'm going to answer that question from experience a couple different ways. So I do a lot of teaching at universities, and there are a lot of people that say, Mike, I would like to start a construction company, or I'm an engineer and I want to start my consulting firm. And I think that while that sounds great, my view would be get some experience first. Work with people, get a mentor, and there'll be a period of time when you'll know that you're ready to be on your own, but you can learn a lot from people, and so don't think about it right away. Once you've thought about it and you have that requisite experience, I think that there's still some great opportunities to be able to do great in the construction field or the engineering field. It's a personal relations business. And you gotta be good at what you do. But if you are good and you can provide value, then at that point, and if you got contacts, and if you're not afraid to work 18 hours a day, because that's kind of what it takes or more to be able to have your own business, and sort of go at it, it's a wonderful way to go. And bonding companies, are amenable to having new businesses. People like to support new businesses. And for many of you, you'll be maybe starting work in the public sector, and there's a lot of opportunities with small businesses to be able to get work. So particularly, if you are disadvantaged. So I'm highly encourage you to do that after you get your experience. Don't rush.
Yeah, thank you. This is a great question. This is from Ryan. What in your job inspires you the most to continue your work? Gets you out of bed in the morning to go to work.
grandchildren. I got to pay for their education because my kids can't. I'll tell you, money. Look, I'm 64 years old now. You know, money never drove me. I say that sincerely, and so you know what drives me and what I think drives most people is the thrill of the chase of being able to get a project and then work that project and see it successful. At this stage of my life, I don't have to. I'm very picky as to what I work on. I don't take projects just to be able to work on them. I want to work with people I like. I want to work on tough projects. And early in my career, I was, you know, motivated to learn about stuff. I mean, learn about design build in particular, and do a lot of writing on it. So you'll find that things along the way will become a passion. For most people, that's the case. And being around people, it can also be a passion. So, but I get asked the question all the time. So, Mike, when are you retiring? And I will just say, you know, I don't think it's ever happening. I think they'll be taking me out in a box somewhere, you know, and with me having, you know, written my last document or my last report. I love being able to be involved in the industry and work on projects that are cool. That's what inspires me.
Yeah, wonderful answers. Sarah's asking something along that line, and she wants to know about a specific project. So what was your most satisfying project that you completed? She follows it up. Was it because you were proud of your own work, your team's work, or the people that it was done for?
Well, I had a lot of them. So my first, I'm gonna flip the answer about my worst project. This one I can talk about. One of my favorite projects was the World Bank headquarters in Washington, D.C. I represented the bank, and this was a totally screwed up project. Engineer news record cover story screwed up because it was a high visibility architect. The project, Clark was the contractor, George Hyman actually at that time, and the project was late, overruns. You know, people heads rolled at the World Bank, and I got in as part of a team that was going to have a reset, and we reset it. We cleaned it up. We changed personnel. We had an attitude of we're going to get stuff resolved. We're not going to have any conflict. And in that 2.5 to 3 years that followed, I was one of many members that was involved with this. So it was a team approach, but I loved the idea that we always talked about how we were going to resolve the problems. And we did. We did. We had engineering news record on the positive side after the project was completed, and everybody got along, by tough choices hadn't been made. So I know we got a time issue. Maybe I'll come back and give another one, but that was a big one for me.
Great, wonderful answer. Thank you. He was asking a question about your legal background. How has that benefited you in the industry, and is that something you would recommend getting knowledge in?
Yes. Well, considering that I was a construction lawyer for effectively 30 years, that's the way I was going to, you know, make my living. But I'm flipping the question now, because in the last 11 years, I've been a consultant. I've sort of been more of an engineer than a lawyer. And having a law background has been great. It gives me a broad perspective that sometimes we don't get educated well in engineering or in construction management. For those of you, I'm not sure, let me just say this. If at some point you say, hey, I think I might want to do law school, find a way to get in touch with me. You know, Google me, or, you know, maybe you already have my information. And I talk to a lot of people, you know, around the country, students or people that are outside that want to go to law school, and I'll give you a perspective on that. But the perspective that I have for all of you is that having a basic understanding of construction law and contracts is vital as project management. If you're going to be a good project manager, you're not going to be a lawyer, but you got to know what the contract says. You got to know some of the subtleties of it, the nuances of it. You should really know how conflicts get handled, and sometimes you're going to have a bad project and you're going to have to then deal with lawyers. All of that is good for you. That doesn't mean you have to go to law school to do it, but be skilled in those areas. Take classes, there's a lot of classes that get taught by associations, sometimes at universities. Take those classes and learn from them.
Yeah, wonderful answers. I speak to alumni here at the University of Colorado and ask them what their most important classes were. They frequently reflect on our legal classes here. So.
Yeah, Keith, I want to say one other thing too. What that class will do for you, and if you had experience in dealing with lawyers, it goes back to what I'd said, very early. You realize that unlike in engineering, where we've got some, generally we've got some real good answers. They may have factor of safety issues or some judgment. The law is fact dependent, and it's so gray that being experienced there will let you understand that everything is not perfect, and that the answers that there are different reasonable answers that two sides can have, and two perspectives that are reasonable. And going through those classes will start getting you thinking about that if you haven't experienced it already.
Great, wonderful answer. And that actually leads into a tough one. I hope you don't mind me asking you a tough one from Samuel here. As a lawyer, you give advice. What do you do when you end up giving the wrong advice?
You say you're sorry. Sometimes the advice that you give is judgmental. I know this happens. If you ever see me in a mediation, you'll know that I don't try to get the last dollar out of anything. I basically feel like at some point you sort of move on. And I've given advice to settle, and I've had clients that have had a lot more chutzpah than I have, and so they'll roll the dice more and they get the money, and they say, "Hey, Loulakis, if I settled the way you said, we would have gotten X amount less." So there is that, but that's judgmental and perspectives. And as far as bad advice, I've had a couple of situations where I miscalculated. I miscalculated how a party would react by putting out a letter that I drafted for a client, and you take it, you learn from it, and then you can't be defensive about it. Let me just put it that way. Same issue that you guys have. If you do something wrong, you'll want to be defensive and do your best not to be. And sometimes I'm good with it. Sometimes I'm not.
Well, we're nearing the end here, and I think Joshua was asking an excellent question. You certainly have, a few minutes to answer it here. There's no rush, Mike, but thought this was a good one to end on. What's something you know now that you wish you would have known coming out of college?
Well, coming out of college, I had no and I don't know, we got a lot of people in here, so I don't know how many of you are engineers. I'm going to say the design side, let's say, versus taking construction management courses. But coming out of college, I really had no really good appreciation for what the construction industry itself was like and how important it was to work with contractors. We were, at Tufts, even to some extent, Tufts is like this now. We're a design school. A lot of our guys are tunneling experts and have moved into construction, but I didn't really have that great experience, and I didn't have that understanding, which I think would have benefited me a lot. The other thing that I didn't have coming out of school was an appreciation for, and this is going to sound weird, but for ethics, and I'll say engineering. Economics, but not in terms of estimating, but just in terms of how money flows. And on the ethics side, it's not just what is the ASCE code of ethics. It's much more situational ethics, where we are put into situations, be it as an employee, and the Me Too movement is a great example of it, right? It's not just it's not discrimination, but it's situations that we put ourselves into or we're in, and how you react to it. And I think that would have been something that would have been great for me. Not that I screwed up much in that area or at all, but just understanding the grayness of what it was like to work, when I went to be a geotechnical engineer for that time period after engineering school. And then when I started working with a law firm and just seeing some of the situations that I was in, and not really having a great feel for that. So when I go back to Tufts now, I teach a situational ethics class, and it's all Socratic, and it's basically rat-a-tat-tat. Here's the situation. What do you think? And then they'll answer, and I'll change the situation, and it's an hour of back and forth, just trying to get them to realize how important all that is. And so that's I don't know if that's a great answer, but that's what comes to mind, Keith.
No, that's a wonderful answer, Michael, and thank you so much for your time. I'm going to encourage any of you listening. We've gotten some words from Michael Loulakis here, but you can go to your library, in fact, and see one of the many books he's written on construction law and project delivery. And I'd also like to really thank you for leaving that legacy for us as well. So many of the lessons learned you've written down, and we can go. I use them in my classes all the time, and I encourage everybody here to think about that as well. So I do have just a couple pieces of business, in addition to saying thank you again for your time. We did randomly select a student that we've asked questions from, and so Ryan Cole in Wisconsin with the University of Wisconsin-Madison. You'll be receiving an email from us and a check from the National Academy of Construction for your studies in the area. So thank you, everyone, for sending in questions. I do hope that you'll be able to join us again, and we'll have the same format and the same opportunity for the scholarship. October 9th at this same time, we'll be having Steve Halverson, who's the chairman from the Haskell Company, and he's going to talk to you about, from a construction company point of view, what it's like to work in the industry. So, Michael, unless you have any other final words?
I actually do. So one of the other things, I always have the last word, right, Keith? So one of the other things that you will realize as you're going through your career is that it's a really small world, and that people that you meet early, show up later in your life. So I just want you to know when you see Steve Halverson, Steve Halverson and I started practicing law together in 1979 at Whitbar Gavin. We were both first-year associates. Steve and I have remained friends. He left after 9 months to go back to Minnesota, and Steve left, but we've remained friends all this time. Steve had the job that I really was supposed to have. He went off and became a construction executive, got out of the practice of law early, became, his background's incredible. And as I keep telling him, I kept schlepping around doing my, working as a lawyer and now working as a consultant, but I never ran a construction company like he did. So you guys will love listening to him, but I just have a big smile when I think of Steve being the one that will talk to you next. He's a terrific guy. He's far more entertaining than I am. Great stories, and you'll enjoy it. So make sure you show up on October 9th. Great.
And I would thank you. 1 month from today, we hope to see you again. And I would be remiss without saying thank you to two folks. One, Jane Song here at the University of Colorado for organizing this all and emailing with everybody here. And also Wayne Crew at the National Academy of Construction for sponsoring this. So thank you all. We'll close it up and hopefully see you again in a month.